Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we are going to be talking about which Kenshin decks are the best and which ones are the worst, and the best and worst parts of each deck. If you guys have seen the set breakdowns that we do when the sets first drop in English, that's essentially me learning the sets for the first time, going over them before the decks are even played at all in our meta. Sure, I've tested them a little bit, but all around still learning the decks in those breakdowns. I wanted to make a video diving into each deck after the fact, things that I've learned along the way, just pretty much more in-depth tips and guides to these decks, as well as the overall prices for the decks now that the market price has pretty much balanced out and we know what the prices are going to be on these SRs for now. And again, obviously those are subject to change at any point. But yeah, and I'll also have a deck list for every single Kenshin deck in this video. So hopefully you guys enjoy. I'm planning on doing these for each set, at least for Kaiju and Yu Yu, Demon Slayer Volume 2 as well. Once they've sort of been in the meta for a little bit, talking about how they're looking and what we've, sort of learned as a community essentially after seeing the decks for so long. Now, obviously, going into the goods and the bads, overall, this is my opinion on the decks, so take that with a grain of salt. When you play the decks, depending on what you go up against, depending on the changes you make to the decks, you might have a completely different opinion on the deck, so I just wanted to mention that now. The prices are going to be based off of the TCG player market price value, so just keep that in mind. If you want to go pick up singles, that's the site I recommend. Check out the marketplace videos that I make if you want more details on that. And also, the prices are essentially just based on the SR prices, considering most of the bulk, commons, uncommons, usually you could probably get for around $5 or less in total, hopefully, especially if you go to like a local shop or somebody, you might even be able to get them for free. So, and also for the prices, I am just going ×4 for each card, a full playset of each card, so just keep that in mind. That's where the total price is coming from. Also, last thing, shout out to eXperts. I'm going to have a video coming soon about the huge version 3 update. But yeah, this site is looking so good. There's a lot of new features. I'm already using like this new folder feature that they added. So video on this coming soon. If you're curious about the site I'm using for these deck breakdowns, I actually posted a video before they did the version 3 update, breaking down what eXperts is, so you can dive into it now and sort of feel it out. But yeah, for anybody curious about the big version 3 update, because there's a lot of really cool new features, I will be making a video on this soon. So massive shout out to eXperts for making this video super easy to make. And yeah, we'll be diving into them by color, so if you want to skip to a certain color, timestamps are down below. But let's start it out with the best deck in the set, one of the best decks that we have in Union Arena right now, and it'll probably stay one of the best for a while, the red Kenshin deck. Right now, the deck is going for about $137 or $117 just for the SRs. The $137 includes like 2 starter decks, since, technically you could pick up just the SRs, pick up the starter decks, put it together, and now you're only missing a few bulk cards. But if you're literally just looking for the SRs, since the starter deck SRs are pretty cheap, they only come out to about $117. $40 for your 4 Kadus, about $72 for your 4 Kenshins, and then about $24 for 2 starter decks, or $12 a starter deck since you get 2 SRs per. But you could also just pick up the SRs super cheap if you wanted to as well, and then just pick up the bulk cards. But there are like starter deck exclusive, like commons and rares that you might want. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes buying the starter deck itself isn't a bad idea. But yeah, all around, that is going to be some very cheap SRs for the deck as far as that goes. Now, red Kenshin is easily one of the best decks and does so many things that top tier decks are trying to do. I actually posted a video right before this just talking about what you want to see in top tier decks, and it's crazy seeing all of these different mechanics in Kenshin. This is the build that I've got here. There's actually a few changes that you can definitely make to it. If you look at all the top 16s, this is the deck that's been topping a lot of regionals recently, and it probably will still definitely be making it into top 16 for a while, and we'll definitely be going over why. But yeah, all around it is just an amazing deck. It's a super low cost deck. It's red, so it plays out super fast how red wants to play. One of the most unique things about this deck is the raids and raid targets, and most decks in Union Arena, a lot of them do have 2 characters of the same name, 2 Kenshins in this case, that are trying to raid on top of other Kenshins in the deck. And when we see that, usually the raid targets are limited to, I would say, about 3 to 4 different cards to choose from to put into your deck. With Kenshin, though, we literally have 6 different raid targets, which is really strong in a game like this, so that we always have raid options on the field, hopefully, because in some games, in some other decks, that's usually one of the big killers, is when you actually don't have a card to raid on top of, but that is not a problem in the Kenshin deck. On top of that, the double energy generation in this deck goes so crazy. 2 extremely strong Kadus, one of them being a 2-cost double energy generator as long as Kenshin's on the front line. Not to mention, the turn you play this card, you can actually choose your Kenshin to protect it into your opponent's next turn, essentially just forcing your opponent to have to trap trash a card, but can make for some insane plays, especially early game, because again, not many decks have access to a 2-cost that can generate double energy, especially this easy by just having a Kenshin on the front line. There's also the 3-cost Karu, who is a double energy generator that you'll see in most decks, but in this deck also allows you to get some draw power. So again, that's something that this deck is doing that's very unique out of the top tier decks, is it not only has rush potential with really good raid options, double attacking for multi-attacks, with pushback for removal, on top of a lot of draw power, so that even though you are rushing, trashing cards for effective plays for the double attack and stuff, you are being able to refill your hand and keep going, which is crazy. This Karu essentially allowing you to draw every turn you don't sideline a card, and that's something else that this deck is doing that's super unique, is Kenshin literally just changes how this game is played. It's the first card that we've ever seen with this very unique effect where during your turn, your opponent's cards that lose to this character in battle are instead moved to the energy line instead of the sideline. And as we all know, 4 cards on the energy line is the maximum, so if your cards are losing battles and they're being pushed back to your energy line, if you have 4 already there, you're going to have to remove them. So essentially a card that's playing into a removal aspect of the game, which also forces your opponents to have to sort of play a different early game as well. Maybe they want to try to free up slots on their back line so that on their energy line, so that when you are attacking as Kenshin, you're just pushing the card back and there's no loss. There's definitely a con to this for sure. If you're up against the wrong decks where they're very, very rush heavy as well, they don't need to keep cards on the energy line. They can literally just block your attacks, and instead of getting sidelined, they're just going right back to the energy line to be pushed up again. So there is a little bit of a con there, but with how fast this deck is playing, you're able to get cards out super fast with the good energy generation on top of it being a 4-cost maximum deck. You're like hardly ever bricking. I also really like this event card. I've been having some really good success with it, the Sakabato, usually only like a 2 of, but with the double attacker, it's just so good for, again, refilling your hand and not having to stress about trashing cards. You get to draw a card with it, and then the Kenshin that turn when attacking gets to draw a card. So if you give it to your double attacker Kenshin, he gets 2 when attacking draws. With him coming out as a draw, that's literally 4 draw power for 2 AP essentially. Super, super strong. Assuming he lives, obviously, because he has to swing in for that extra attack to get the draw, of course. But yeah, this deck can come out insanely strong, just seeing the perfect cards off rip so that it is just swinging for 3 or 4 attacks by its 3rd turn, if that. Also, again, just drawing like crazy, forcing you into these weird positions where you're having to remove certain cards or play cards on the front line at a pressure. It's such a strong deck. It's crazy. Now, it can definitely run out of steam. Considering it only has 1 search target, if you don't see your raids, it can definitely run into those situations where the deck doesn't feel too good because you can't find your raids and they're kind of like stuck at the bottom and there's not a ton of ways to get down to them. However, I would say the draw power in this deck does sort of save it, as well as like just this 3-cost here, who if you're not seeing your raids, he can still come out set to active by trashing a card. Again, just sort of pressuring your opponent still. Impact Nullify, which can be such a game changer in the end if you really need it. And then on top of that, the raids out of life are just so strong. In this game, there's a lot of raids where they have a when played effect, where you wouldn't want to waste that when played effect on your opponent's turn, because then it wouldn't really do anything for you. Like when played, you get sniped until the end of the turn. Doesn't help defensively. While these Kenshins are in a completely different spot where they will always be able to be raided out of life. One of them being just super strong and actually changing the game completely if he does come out of life. Because if you raid out of life, it's a free body, so that's just always nice. But in general, with this Kenshin, for example, he comes out of life, now you're pushing a card back, so you're either pushing back a card that was going to attack, maybe even for the win, and on top of that, you're freeing up a slot on your opponent's front line to get in an extra attack the next turn. Such a great card to get out of life. And again, with all these Kenshin raid targets, there's a good chance you're going to be able to raid it out. As well as this Kenshin too. There's no reason not to. It's a free body. It's a one-play draw, and now next turn you've got him on the field ready for his one attacking ability. Again, just having these raids that are probably going to be able to be raided out of your life, and not only that, but help you and put you ahead is just so strong. It's crazy. But yeah, this deck can definitely be shut down through, of course, having its raids removed, as most decks would, right? But doesn't really have a way to come back if you are removing its main raid targets and then you are putting it into a sort of a long game where they can't play out multiple raids and they're not seeing extras. Obviously, there's a completely different game where they're seeing almost all their raids, constantly getting them out, and there's quite literally nothing you can do. It's crazy how this deck can make you feel like there's nothing you can do against it. But in the other situations where it's not seeing the cards it wants, you're able to remove its big cards like the double attacker or the impactor. one of the only two ways to remove Kenshin's during your turn abilities, so that now your opponent can't just block and be pushed back. So again, essentially changing how the game is being played in your opponent's mind mid-game now that you're taking those abilities away from your Kenshins. And a really interesting thing about this card is when you use the active main ability and you're doing the all Kenshin characters on your field lose during your turn abilities, you're actually giving that ability to yourself. It's so weird, so that if this Kenshin does get removed that turn, all your Kenshins still lose the during your turn ability, which you do want. You don't want your opponent to block and have the option to keep that card alive. You want them to block and have it go to the sideline, right? And one of the last things, I mean, you got to mention it, the special bottom decks. It can target a 5k no matter what, pushing it to your opponent's energy line, which is great. You're probably always going to have a Kenshin on the field, though, so you can put it on the bottom of your opponent's deck, which is, in my opinion, the best form of removal in this game. There's some decks that can thrive by having cards in the removal, not many, but all around, if you put a card on the bottom of your opponent's deck, it's always going to hurt them. They're never going to see it again. If they're trying to mill their deck out, now you're hurting them with that. It is just such a great mechanic. So their special being able to bottom deck stuff is so good. So yeah, all around, if you're able to get the right setup with this deck, if you're able to get your draw power going, especially the earlier the better with it, you're able to put yourself in this position where you're not really running out of steam and you're pressuring your opponent so hard and so fast that there's not many decks that can say much against you. Again, at the end of the day, the worst thing about this deck is kind of when you're playing against yourself and you're not seeing the right cards, but I'd say with the right draw power, with this searcher, and I'm going to throw out an honorable mention here from the homie Zan, who got top 16 last time, and I've seen it in a few other decks, I think, but he's the first deck I saw it in that really made me see it, is this Megumi, this really, really nice double energy generating card who can actually recycle one or less cost cards back into your hand the turn you play her, essentially allowing you to recycle this search Kenshin so that, again, in the worst games where you're just not seeing your raids, you can replay this Kenshin out and get more searches going. Because this is going to be the thing that saves you in those games where you're not seeing the right cards, right? Is being able to search out those Kenshin raids. Yeah, all around, an amazing deck. Can definitely run out of steam and sort of feels like a high roll deck, but at the same time is an insanely consistent deck with how low cost it is. All the cards being Kenshin, so you're always being able to raid. And yeah, again, just changing the game completely with how it plays, pushing cards back to your opponent's energy line and stuff. It is definitely going to hold a pretty solid price tag, I'd say, for a while, because I just don't see this deck getting shut down by anything. You know, I believe Green Code Geass with Volume 2, for example, was cooking for a while because it's this insane deck that once it comes online, there's not much your opponent can say because the cards are just so massive and they're doing so much to you, removing stuff, etc. However, Kenshin sort of came in and shut that down a little bit because that deck needs a little bit of time to set up. If it has cards on its energy line, it has to remove like double energy gens. It kind of gets shut down. We're gonna have to see what comes into the game to shut something like this down. Maybe an insanely strong double blocking deck or something. I don't know. But yeah, Red Kenshin definitely gonna be a top tier deck for a while. I'd say one of the best in the game, no doubt. And yeah, I'd say this is a pretty standard build for Kenshin. You're not going to see a lot of Sakabatos in decks, but I've seen people go back and forth on the card. One that I've seen people have pretty good success with, but I've been pretty back and forth on it, is this Hiten Mitsurugi. It's a 2-cost event card. You can choose one of your opponent's cards on the front line and switch to resting, but its true value is in the other line of text here, where when this card is in your hand and it's sidelined by one of your Kenshin abilities, you get to draw a card. So again, another card that can sort of help you keep your games going. If you have to trash cards, it doesn't actually count as a trash essentially because you're trashing this. This card doesn't have a trigger, and there's a lot of really good trigger cards in Kenshin, at least in the red Kenshin deck. So yeah, I don't know. There's definitely reasons to not run it, but all around, definitely a card worth considering. Another thing to mention on the Kenshin deck too is just how high BP some of these cards are. It's crazy. We've never seen a 3k BP 0, even if they aren't getting up on the front line to attack early, or if they are. Great for blocking, so just in general on a 0, that's crazy. There's also this 2-cost who's a 4k defender or a 3k attacker. Such a strong card for a 2-cost. Like, we don't see BP this high on cards this low. So it's crazy how Kenshin got so many of these new, really strong elements all stacked together to just make for this top tier deck. It's crazy. Not to mention the 0-cost add-to-hand has Step as well, which I'm pretty sure we don't see that often on the add-to-hand raid targets, and him being a 2k for the raid target. Usually, the add-to-hand raid targets don't have an ability and are 1500. So is this just a Kenshin thing? Is this going to be like a new era Union Arena thing? We're going to have to see. This is crazy. Yeah, there's so many good elements in the Kenshin deck that you won't see in many other decks. It's wild. But yeah, Kenshin. Amazing, amazing deck. And then we've got the red Sanosuke deck here, a very, very good deck in my opinion, one that I've had some pretty good games with, pretty solid success. I feel like it can run out of steam and it does need a pretty particular setup, but all around a very fast-paced deck where it should be able to pressure your opponent in most games. I haven't played it in a while, but it's fun the few times that I did run it. It's crazy that it's literally a $5 deck. If you look at the prices here, yeah, the Sanosuke's are literally going to cost you like $2 for your playset. The Yahiko's maybe putting you at like $3 for the playset. And those are the only SRs in the deck. And then we'll get to it here in a little bit, but there's actually this hybrid that I've been messing around with. Shout out to Ron for showing me the idea. Yeah, it's a really, really, really good deck with the starter deck Kenshin. Can play into some really, really good games. And again, stays on the cheap side because it's the starter deck Kenshin. But yeah, before we get into that, the true Sanosuke deck, the Sanosuke deck, I mean, the deck can play out for some crazy high-pressure turns. The 5 cost being really, really good as far as a damage 2, and then having this really nice ability where you're actually able to turn him into an impactor, essentially, if your opponent does decide to block him. Now, you do need a Sanosuke to rest on the front line in order to do that, but you have this 4 cost 2 action point who's, when rested, you can actually restand him. And this works on your opponent's abilities as well, so if you're going up against like a freeze deck or something, that can be really good. But yeah, once per turn, if he's on the front line, if he's going to be set to rested by you or your opponent's abilities, he actually just gets switched to active. So it could be a really good counter to freeze as well. Also has a when played force block, so the removal in this deck can be very, very high pressure. I also just love the, again, taking advantage of cards that were set to resting, like for example, this Sanosuke here, who is, if he's active on the energy line, you can swap him with a card that was rested, or a card that hasn't attacked this turn. How I see it though is a card that you could just slap a card rested on the front line and now he's up there attacking. So that could be really, really good. Or maybe you use this ability to rest like a small Sanosuke on the front line and then swap him with like your double energy gen. Again, just playing into some really, really cool turns where you're taking advantage of fast-paced early attacks. I've had quite a few games where I'm just swinging with like 4 attacks by my 3rd turn. It's wild. There's also this really, really nice double energy gen who can just restand a rested Sanosuke the turn he's played. Or, again, the Yahiko, who's a fantastic engine here. When attacking, you can actually trash a card and then choose one of your characters who has not attacked and switch it to active. That's the one downfall in this deck, is the cards that are being switched to active, or the cards you're taking advantage of that are rested, they are not allowed to have attacked that turn. So there's not going to be any ways to cheat out like 5 attacks in this turn. You can't attack with the card and then swap it on the energy line. All these cards are going to specifically say cards that have not attacked this turn. But again, can still play into some really, really strong turns where you're pressuring your opponent early game. And so yeah, again, that's probably the thing that holds it back the most, is you aren't able to cheat out like 5 or 6 attacks in a turn. You are still limited to 4. But in my opinion, the damage 2 with the impact, the force block with the 2 AP, the searching with this Akibiko can be really strong. It's just a site you play, and then you get to grab a Sanosuke for free. You don't have to trash a card, or you can take any character and trash a card. It's really, really good. While I'm, back and forth on sites, searching is fantastic, and that's a great thing. And that is also something that this deck does suffer from, just like Kenshin, is you really only have the one search option here. Unlike Kenshin, you don't have a ton of draw power in this deck, so that's probably where this deck really does fall flat, is if you don't see your 2 big Sanosuke's, there's a good chance you're not going to see them if they're stuck in the bottom or something. This deck can also play out for a really interesting endgame if your opponent's down to 2 life left, where you're swinging with this Sanosuke as a damage 2. Obviously, they have to block it, right? Or they're going to go down to 0 life. But now you're forcing them into an impact block as long as you have a Sanosuke to rest. So if you can set up with maybe this event card here, giving one of your other Sanosuke's impact, or maybe you give this impact to this Sanosuke so that he's swinging for damage 2 to 2 life. If your opponent blocks, now he's going to be a force block, impact 2 for the 2 life still. Again, it can play out for some really high pressure games. I think just all around, it's the consistency and how good the red Kenshin deck that really makes people not dive into this deck, I feel like. The special is also really weird. I haven't had issues running it, but I can see it being annoying. You literally can't use it if you don't have a Sanosuke on the field. But if you do use it, you get to choose a 5K no matter what and sideline it. You also get the option to rest one of your active Sanosuke's and put it into the removal instead, being a pretty good counter to certain decks that might want to revive out a sideline or wants cards into the sideline. But yeah, all around, you're able to just sideline 5Ks with it. You just can't play it if you don't have Sanosuke. But luckily, you have enough Sanosuke's in this deck where that shouldn't be a problem. But again, unlike the red Kenshin deck, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 raid targets, and we're probably not raiding on top of our 4 costs, who I don't even have a 4 of. Unlike Kenshin, who has 6 very solid raid options. I'd say 5 solid raid options. One of them's the 4 2 AP. Regardless, it's crazy, the comparison. But all around, again, a very, very fun, interesting deck that plays super fast, and if people don't see it coming, it's going to hard pressure them, especially for a $5 deck. I think for a $5 deck, it is 100% worth trying out if you want to. But yeah, with the lack of draw power, it can definitely run out of steam. You know, if you use your big cards and then not see any others, hard to come back from that if you're not getting them fast. The only real draw power in this deck is really like the raid when played draw card, and then you have like the draw trash, and that's really it. So there might be some games where it feels really bad when your big guys die early and you only see 1 or 2 of them, or if you just don't see them at all. On top of that, the Sanosuke raid is a 5 cost. Luckily, we do have access to pretty solid double energy gens, but just keep that in mind. Unlike the Kenshin deck, where you're able to just push cards up, you only need 4 energy, this Sanosuke does require 5. So at times, that will play into the game for sure. But yeah, all around a pretty solid deck. Honestly, I would say it's a pretty standard high roll deck for red. If you're high rolling and you're seeing the right cards early, it's gonna be strong and it's gonna pressure most decks and put your opponent in a weird spot. But, you know, with it being able to run out of steam early, with it being able to be shut down pretty easily, I'd say, again, with these being your main cards, I would say it's a pretty mid deck. Again, I don't want to go into tier lists and ratings and stuff, but as far as Kenshin decks go, and where we are in the meta, I'd say, yeah, it's a pretty high roll deck, pretty okay deck. It's not bad. It is not the worst deck, again, especially for the price. It's a very fun deck for sure if you wanted to build it just to play for fun, play with your friends, play locally. But as far as like top tier consistency wise, it's a pretty mid deck, I'd say. It's a pretty mid deck. But again, the high roll can go crazy in those few games for sure. Now, one brew that I have been having a lot of fun with lately, and unlike the other Kenshin colors where you can't do much mixing, the red mix between Kenshin and Sanosuke can go pretty crazy. Still sort of keeping the main elements from Sanosuke, only cutting like the 4 cost essentially, going down a little bit on Sunon here, just so we can take more advantage of like maybe this Megumi to get back certain cards. But yeah, essentially splashing in more than anything the pushback impact raid Kenshin. You know, if he comes out of life at the right time with a Kenshin on the bench, top tier, he's just going to be such a great addition to the team. On top of that, with his push ability, he can actually play into some really interesting turns where you're maybe playing out the 2 AP force block Sanosuke, and you're able to now choose more with the pushback who you're forcing your opponent to block with, right? On top of that, as we were saying earlier with the whole damage 2 while your opponent's at 2 life, forcing them down to 1 with the impact block, you now have an impactor to finish that up with as well, so that, you know, they're down to 2, you do that, get them down to 1 with Sanosuke, now you have your other impact to swing with. While I do think the bad sign whatever event card, while I do think, where's that card? Yeah, well, I do think the single character of bad is a pretty cool card, especially for what Sanosuke is doing. Oh man, event cards are just so rough. At the end of the day, I'd rather just have this card. For the 1 action point I'm paying, you know, I'd rather raid this Kenshin out. Keep in mind, I am experimenting with 7 raid options. Should be more than enough for our 1 raid target, I would hope. Kind of just keep 1 of them on the bench, maybe have 2 of them out throughout the whole game, 2 or 3 of them. But yeah, overall, not trying to splash in too many Kenshins to raid on top of, and they're the zeros who are really strong as well. Of course, the add to hand if it ends up in life, because the whole point is to raid. He's also got step, and then the insane 3k 0 costs. Yeah, again, a really, really, really good deck, really strong deck. Again, with searching being a little bit of a problem at times might be annoying, but I think that's where this revive can kind of come in clutch, at least with getting back your raid targets, especially for Kenshin. And again, I'm keeping in the Akibiko since you can grab any character with it. You just have to trash if it's not a Sanosuke. But yeah, all around, I'd say it's a pretty fun deck. Definitely try it out if you are trying to go with the mix of the two. Again, especially if you're trying to build a cheap deck, because this brew is literally only going to cost you like whatever the starter deck is extra on top of the Sanosuke. So maybe $10 deck here, maybe. Unless you buy the starter decks, of course, which ups it to like, I don't know, $30 maybe. But yeah, again, you shouldn't need the 2 starter decks. At this point, if you're doing this build, I would definitely just pick up, I don't know, the Kenshins maybe. But yeah, either way, very, very cheap, fun, honestly pretty strong deck. But yeah, all around, I've been having a lot of fun with this brew. I love when we are able to mix decks, especially when they work out as good as this, being able to sort of complement each other too. Yeah, all around, I would say this is... Honestly, I think I like it a little better than the Sanosuke deck, again, just because it gives you a little bit more options. You're not just depending on your 2 big Sanosukes over here. And again, just playing into some more really strong endgame options as well, or more defensive options mid-game. I would say this is a little better than the Sanosuke deck. It's obviously not top tier like the Kenshin deck just because it has him in here, but I would say all around, it could definitely surprise your opponents and put on some really strong pressure, make for some interesting games. And then diving into the blue Kenshin deck, something to mention off rip here is this really nice addition to blue that can be put into either deck is this 2-cost Misao, who actually counts as a 0 cost if you have no cards on the field. So she's a fantastic card to play out as your first card of the game, especially because of her when played, you get to look at the top 3 cards, place them back onto the top of your deck however you'd like, and you can even put one of those cards, if you want, into your sideline. So just an amazing deck filtering card, help you from bricking, help you set up for some crazy games. Crazy 0 cost that you would pretty much want in any deck, honestly, especially because she has a draw trigger on top of it all. Great card for sure. So yeah, again, both blue decks have access to this card, so makes for some really strong early games. Now, taking a look at the Aoshi deck here, this is going to be the first blue deck that we dive into. One of my favorite Kenshin decks, one of the ones I've probably played the most. It's so fun. Again, sort of has that high roll. You really need to get the right setup for it. Could get shut down easily, but can also swing for literally 8 attacks in a turn, which is so pressure. It's so high pressure. There's so many decks that cannot do anything against that unless the Aoshi gets shut down. So yeah, diving into it, the Aoshi deck here, a really fun deck. It's a really interesting deck too that I don't think people have really dove into enough. So taking a look at the price off rip, this is only like about a $18, $20 deck. The Misao is only costing you about $8 for your playset. The Aoshi is only costing you about $2 maybe for your playset. The real price, if anything, comes down to the starter deck exclusive Aoshis, which come out to about $8 as well. But yeah, all around putting the deck to about like $18, $20 at most. It's so cheap and really fun too. One of my favorite decks to play in Kenshin. But yeah, this deck can be really strong. It can set up and almost guarantee win sometimes, just with how fast and how many attacks it can get out. It can really pressure your opponent when their life can't do anything to help them. Granted, a special trigger, a color trigger like yellow where it can just freeze the attacker, sort of shuts down the deck for the turn, but it has some really good raid options, draw power, and searching, so you can play into some pretty consistent games. Pretty solid removal options as well. Essentially what the deck is all playing around here, though, is this special here, this Kaiten Kenbo 6 Successions. You get to choose an Aoshi on your field. It loses 1,000 BP, but it gains an ability. At the end of this character's attack, you may switch one active Aoshi on your field to resting, and if you do, switch this character to active. No limit either, so you can activate this as many times as you have active Aoshis to rest. And it is after each attack, so keep in mind, if you swing into a special on your first attack, your Aoshi gets shut down and the turn's over. You're not resting those Aoshis anymore. But since it's on the field too, you can rest Aoshis on your energy line and play out 4 extras attacks essentially from your energy line with the 1 card on your front line. Essentially, since you're losing 1,000, what your best game plan is to raid this Aoshi out here. When played, he becomes a 5k. Then you use his active main ability here to put an Aoshi back onto your energy line so that you have another card to rest. He keeps the 5k, but now he'll go down to 4 with that special. And then there's this really unique line of text that these Aoshis have, but it makes sense when you play the deck. So when you, for example, with this card's main ability, when you remove the card underneath him that you rated on top of and you put it onto your field somewhere, or you play it onto the field, it gains this character cannot attack, and if this character is active at the end of your attack phase, sideline it. So what you're essentially trying to do is re-raid on top of that card, or with your special, rest it so that now it's not going to get sidelined at the end of your turn. It also states that you play the card from this rated character. Again, this guy's like the main engine of the deck. Since it's saying you play a character, you can also take advantage of when played effects from Aoshis you raid on top of, like this 2 cost here. When played with a character's ability, you get to draw a card, or the simple 0 cost, when played, draw and trash a card. So again, the draw power in this deck can go crazy. Being able to replay those when played abilities and take advantage of them, being able to re-raid on top of cards can just make for some strong turns. But again, the main mechanic here is setting up Aoshis on your energy line and resting them as you're attacking for some really, really strong turns. Now, there are some rough games for sure where you're seeing like your Misao 0 cost here, you're seeing her, you're seeing Hanya. Not many Aoshis is what I'm getting at. So when your turn is finally time to set up and raid and use the special, you've only got like 2 Aoshis on the field to actually rest. So it does require a little bit of a setup for sure. The best games are where you go 0 Aoshi, 1 Aoshi, 2 Aoshi, and like by your third or fourth turn when you're ready to pop this special, your whole field is just Aoshi. That is definitely the best way to do it. There's also some cards that play from your sideline too. So again, the consistency and the potential to just always get off your game plans in this deck is definitely there. It's really cool. You have this 3-cost Hanya who, when sidelined, well, one, he's a double energy generator, so great card for that. But when he's sidelined, you can place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. And if you do, you get to play 1 blue Aoshi with 2 or less energy from your sideline set to resting on your field. So you can essentially recycle those Aoshis, get your field set up with him. You've also got this event card, which I've had a lot of success with, Movement of Flowing Water, where you get to play an Aoshi with 2 or less from your sideline set to active onto your field. It'll gain the traditional Aoshi effect that we were talking about. This character can attack, and if it's active at the end of your attack phase, you sideline it until the end of the turn. But if you played a character from your hand with this ability, you actually get to draw a card. So you can use this with this Aoshi to essentially get a free draw 2, or I guess 1 action point draw 2. But best part about the Movement of Flowing Water is if you don't have the Aoshis in hand, you can actually replay them at a sideline. So even if you are losing the Aoshis from life and they're going into sideline, or if you're losing them early game, there's ways to recycle them back onto your board to keep this game plan going. It's so strong. And again, with this whole, this character can attack and it's going to get sidelined by the end of the turn if it's still active. There's ways around it, like with raiding the other Aoshi, which, by the way, something that can definitely hold this deck back is it being special dependent, right? You can have this whole setup, and the other thing that can really make this deck fall flat is the fact that it's waiting for this special card. Well, we actually have a raid Aoshi here, the other one, where when played, you get to look at the top 3 cards, reveal any Oni Waban group, which is basically your whole deck, or an event card with Kaiten Kenbu in it, which is literally your special. So this raid card, when played, can search out your special. You don't have to trash a card for it either. So again, the consistency is there. On top of that, this deck has 8 impact nullifiers. I don't know how this deck isn't performing much better. I think it's being slept on a little bit. Don't get me wrong, it requires a little bit of a setup and it can be a little bit inconsistent, but it's crazy. 8 impact nullifiers on your raid and your 0 cost, who has a trigger, by the way, so that hopefully in late games where you're getting swung at with impact, you can actually stay alive to keep going. We also have this really strong 4-cost Aoshi here, who when played, you can switch to resting an active Oni Waban group affinity card on your front line. Again, pretty much your whole deck except Konryu, who we'll get to. But yeah, you can switch them to resting so that he's active, essentially, resting your smaller characters so that you have a 4K ready to attack, or saving your cards that have this ability and you don't have a way around getting them sidelined at the end of the turn. Now, the one thing the deck doesn't have a ton of is removal. You actually do have a second special to choose from, this 4-cost Kaiten Kenbu, where you can actually sideline a 3K or more depending on the Aoshis on your field. In my opinion, though, we're playing for the 8 attack turns. We don't want to see this card. We want to see this special every single time. So the removal in this deck is forcing your opponent to block, I feel like. But keep that in mind. If there is any other removal that you're trying to strive for, I'd say it's this Konryu, who is actually just straight up removal. And he's a pretty good version of it, too. He's a 3-cost, 2 action points, so 2 action points can be a bit rough. He's a double energy generator, though. And then when played, you can either sideline a 2K or less on your opponent's front line, or you can sideline one of your Oni Waban groups, again, your whole deck, and sideline one of your opponent's 4Ks on their front line. You also get to draw a card, and if you sideline your Hanya, you can just use his ability to play an Aoshi from your sideline. Again, the cycles are there, the game plan is there, the consistency, I feel like, can be there. It's just that setup that can be a little unfortunate. The deck sort of gets shut down to rush as well, I feel like. But at the same time, with small bodies that you're able to push up and block with a good form of removal, and hopefully getting these raids out of life to keep you alive, I feel like the deck can definitely hold its own in most games. Definitely against decks like Kenshin. I mean, there's going to be a lot of decks that Kenshin just shuts down because it does not allow you to build up your energy line. But at the same time, you can use those Kenshins to push back your Aoshis and set up for your big turns. Because, again, that's essentially the best plays in this deck is you've got like him on the front line with your other 4Ks, and then on your back line you have smaller Aoshis to rest with your special. So all around you're getting like 8 attacks off. It can be so strong. And honestly, even just early game, swinging for 4 attacks out of him while your opponent has 1 blocker can be super, super strong as well. But yeah, all around, especially for the price, I'd say it's a really solid deck. Again, even though it is a bit of a high roll deck, you are only winning if you're getting off your perfect game plans. And I'd say its biggest con, no doubt, is definitely the fact that Aoshi's just getting shut down to the first special or freeze trigger in life, unfortunately, or a raid that'll push him back. Because the second that he can no longer attack and rest cards, the special kind of ran out of steam, right, that turn. Keep in mind, there is also this card who, I don't know, I was back and forth on him because he does require some setup, but at the end of the day, he could keep those turns alive. He's a protector for your Aoshis, 4 cost during your turn. If he's on the front line, if an Aoshi leaves your field due to your opponent's ability, you may sideline this active character instead, so he does need to be active too. But again, you're gonna feel really good if you swing into a special with Aoshi, and instead of your whole turn getting shut down after your special, you've got him to take the hit instead from the special, and you get to keep going. Not a bad addition as well. It's just getting him set up. We're already going for so much high roll. I'd rather just focus on the other parts of the deck, in my opinion. This event card could probably be cut down to like a 2 possibly, but I really enjoy it. But yeah, all around, I'd say definitely falls into the category of like a high roll deck, but again, I want to say it's pretty consistent. I'm going to say it's a very solid deck though. All around, if you're looking for a good deck to dive into with Union Arena, this is going to be one right here. You are going to surprise people, and there's not a lot of decks that can shut down your game plan. They're really just preying on their life. And diving into the other blue Kenshin deck, this is actually the first Kenshin deck that I was diving into myself, really trying to make work, and after a while I just gave up on it. It actually is a more expensive deck, I was surprised to see, than the Aoshi deck, and pretty much the third most expensive deck right after Hajime Saito. It's a $32 deck. You're looking at about $8, again, for your Misos, because this is a card you can splash into either deck. But would recommend it because it's such a good 0 cost. You've got $4 for your Kenshins, one of the cheapest SRs for sure, as well as only about $4 for your Seijuros. The real big price here is the starter deck Seijuros. Again, this price could always change, and all these prices could change, just because I think the reason it's higher than it should be, I should say, is because there's only a few listings on the market right now. I'm pricing the deck at about $32 since these are about $4 a piece right now, but just like, because these are literally equivalent. This is a starter deck exclusive, so is this one. You get 1 of each in every starter deck. If there's 28 of these on the market, it'd probably be less than Aoshi. So yeah, just keep that in mind. The real price is just from the starter deck exclusive Seijuro. Otherwise, it's a very, very cheap deck to build for sure. It's a really, really interesting deck, though. Can feel really bad some games if you're just not seeing your cards in the correct order, seeing your big costs first, and then into not seeing your specials, which you want to recycle. Or you can feel absolutely top tier, going for double attacks, getting your big 7 damage 2 out while also recycling a special card. That's where the deck is really thriving, in my opinion, is the fact that it's recycling event cards if you're able to do it. This Seijuro, when played, he's an 8k damage 2 on your turn, but also when played, you get to add any event card from your sideline to your hand. So in my opinion, at least when I was playing it, if the turns were there to recycle the finals for sure, but overall you're really just trying to recycle your removals so that you're able to play out specials over and over, playing out for some really good turns. On top of that, this card can also buff your Kenshin, which is what your whole game plan is here, getting your 5-cost Kenshin up to 6k so that he can get double attack when he's at 6,000. Also a really good deck when it comes to draw power and search and filtering for sure. That's its other main thing, is filtering, but this card able to draw a card when it's attacking as long as you're at 3 or less in hand, so you can trash cards without really caring. And yeah, all around a really, really interesting deck in terms of filtering. You have this Kenshin here who allows you to look at the top 2 and filter them onto the top or sideline. The Miso, as we were mentioning, allows you to filter the top 3, sideline up to 1 of them. You've also got this Seijuro, when played, you get to filter the top 2, put any into the sideline. This site card here allowing you to search for a Seijuro or Kenshin, and you can actually add it to your hand for no trash unless it's a 4 or higher, then you have to trash. Again, it's crazy. There's a lot of like filtering where you'd think they help you to get to your game plan. But yeah, it's wild. I don't know. I didn't never really had issues rating. It was just seeing the right sequences. I'll be honest, I didn't understand what the issue was with this deck. I just kind of ended up giving up with it. I mean, it needing 7 energy definitely isn't great, but you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 really good double energy generating options, especially this 2 cost to the turn you player can just be a double energy generator. She also helps with buffing your Kenshins up as well if you need. But yeah, there was just something with this deck that fell flat. I honestly just couldn't nail it and just ended up giving up on it. There are also games where you would get the perfect setup. You get Kenshin out with your Seijuro and you start swinging, and then just a special trigger to shut you down. Next turn they remove something, and the next turn they remove like your Kenshin or whatever, vice versa. And now, boom, you've got to start all over. Maybe that's one of the issues with it as well, is it sort of is really hard to pick back up its steam. You can play out your cards, get your game plan going, but if it does get shut down, there's just kind of not much you can do. While you do have plenty of raid options and stuff, yeah, there's just some things in this deck that don't feel great. It's very unfortunate. Something really, really strong in this deck that I was shocked I didn't see more often was this 3-cost Kenshin. His active main, if he's on the energy line, you can actually place a Will to Live from your sideline into the bottom of your deck, push him up to your front line, and now he's a 4K. So you can use his energy, and then when you're out of action points ready to attack, use that ability to push him up, and now he's a 4K attacker, just basically for free, essentially, because you just put a card from your sideline into the bottom of your deck. Yeah, again, a really, really strong card. Same with like this Seijuro card here, who in the end game, of course, because now you don't need the energy anymore, presumably, you trash 2 cards from your active main, and you can actually move him up to the front line. There weren't many games where this got annoying, but I could definitely see it kind of hurting you. Is this line of text on this card. He actually cannot be played onto your front line and can only be moved to your front line with his ability. So sort of limited you on what cards could be pushed up, having options to push up and pressure with. He's a 4K, which is really nice. There's obviously reasons for it, but yeah, unfortunately, yeah, this deck just did not perform well for me. At the end of the day, though, this does feel like a very pilot-dependent deck. It does feel a little special dependent as well, sort of like Aoshi, where if you're not seeing it to recycle with your Seijuros, I'm sure there's not going to be any other game plans that feel super top tier. But all around, this is a pilot dependent deck. I feel like if there's any deck I could be proven wrong on in this list, it's probably this Kenshin deck. Again, it's sort of a high roll deck because you need to see your cards in the right order, but at the same time, with draw power and ramping, should be fairly consistent and filtering right. So I don't want to say it's a high roll deck, but in general, pilot dependent deck can pop off some games, but other games just really, really fall flat and feel really bad. I think all around, final conclusion, I'm going to say this is the worst deck in the Kenshin set. I could be proven wrong. I'm also open to being proven wrong. I think I could be proven wrong about this. I'm sure there's some people out there that really love this deck, but I just feel like against certain matchups, it feels really bad, especially against Red Kenshin, obviously, where you're trying to build up your energy line with double energy generators, and he's just pushing them back. But yeah, all around, I don't know. This is the first deck I started with in Kenshin. It was the one I really wanted to play. And yeah, I just ended up not playing it because it did not feel good most of the time. Let me know any changes you guys might make to this, though, if you are planning on playing it or if you do play it, and there's any cards you think that I should be throwing in here. Very curious. And then diving into the second best deck in Kenshin, debatably even the best deck in Kenshin just because it's doing so many things right. Only thing that Red Kenshin has on it is the fact that it's a lower cost, faster paced deck. But in general, Hajime Saito, such an amazing deck. For a Union Arena deck, it's just doing everything that you want, especially for a deck that's ramping. It's a super affordable deck, I'd say, for the most part, especially for a top tier deck. This is, again, a competitor for Red Kenshin, I'd say. I think it definitely, they play well into each other. The deck goes for about $52, I estimated. I go more off of market rather than like the available, obviously, because there's probably only 1 or 2 that are $5, right? Yeah, so estimating about $28 for your 4 Saitos, $12 for your 4 cost Saitos, and then $12 for your starter deck Saitos. Where are they? Now, keep in mind, I don't think this starter deck Hajime Saito is a 4 of, but just for simplicity's sakes, at least in my build, he's not a 4 of. I'm just saying $12 for the 4 of him. So yeah, all around, looking at a total of about $52 for the deck. And I'd say for a top tier deck that is going to perform well, works consistently, does some really, really strong things that you want to see in Union Arena decks, I'd say that's a pretty solid price for a top tier deck. It consistently ramps up to its 6 cost very easily while having some extremely strong options along the way to help pressure your opponent while you set up for it. If you don't know, this is one of the first decks that we got, one of the only decks that attacks from the energy line. On top of that, he's an impact snipe from energy line, and if you're not aware, attacking from energy line is just such a top tier ability. If you do have like 4Ks to attack with first on your front line, if they're attacking and they swing into a special, that special trigger or yellow trigger, whatever, is going to target this Hajime Saito. A raid that they play out cannot target the energy line. So as long as he's back there waiting to attack, anything you swing into with other cards onto your opponent's front line are not able to target him. So making into some really, really strong turns where he's protected from anything coming out of life, and then once he comes onto the front line to attack, that's when he becomes vulnerable. But at that point, he's already gotten off his impact snipe, removing a character, taking a life. We don't really mind too much if he gets removed. But yeah, even though he's a 6 cost, which in most decks would sort of hurt it as far as ramping up to it, there's a lot of good double energy generating options in this deck. Obviously, we've got our 2 cost double energy generator, who's just a great addition in a lot of decks if you're trying to ramp. But we've also got this really, really strong Hajime Saito, who is obviously a raid target, but he's a double energy generator who, when played, allows you to push up a Kenshin, Saito, or Sanosuke card on your field to the other line. Essentially push up, though, is how I look at this card. You can either put it back to your energy line or you can push it up. So essentially allowing you to pressure your opponent while ramping up, because in most decks, you're keeping cards on your energy line, playing this 3 cost to get the energy, and now you gotta wait till next turn to take advantage of the cards that you were keeping on the energy line. This card can just push you right up and attack with it. Such a great addition. You've also got just this very nice 3 cost Kenshin, who's a double energy generator, who can be a 4K if you just trash 1 card from your hand. So yeah, with some really, really nice double energy generating options in the deck, it plays really well. You've also got 2 fantastic search cards in this deck, which searching is always a great way to help you stay consistent. Our generic 1 cost, who allows us to look at the top 3, grab a Kenshin, Saito, or Sanosuke, trash a card if we took one, of course. And also something unique about this deck real quick is when we see searching in Union Arena decks, we don't always see them being able to grab this many options, especially grab themselves. So such a great search tool. We've also got the 4 cost raid, who, while we're building up to the 6 cost, this guy should be easy to get out, who also allows us to search the top 5, grab any of those 3 characters, but then we don't even have to sideline for it. We also get to look at the top 5, so more room to search for stuff if we're really struggling. He's an impact nullified too, and he also can't be blocked by characters with 2K or less. This is such a wild 4 cost raid. Like, if you get this guy out of life, or just at any point, it's just such a good raid to have. Again, especially since he's a 4, allowing you to sort of play that middle ground fast game while you're building up to your 6 cost. On top of that, you've also got this 4 cost Kenshin, who's a 2 action point, who comes out set to active, reducing the AP of the next Hajime Saito in your hand by 3, who's cost 3 or less, reducing their action points by 1. Essentially allowing you to play a Hajime Saito for free with this card, who more than anything makes this card just feel like a 4 cost 1 action point set to active, which is so good. But you can literally play this card out, use his ability to play him, push up one of your smaller cards. Now you've got your 2 active characters on the front line ready to attack while generating good energy. This deck is just so good. Not to mention, it's also got the exclusive 2 cost that counts as a 0. This one, unlike blue, can only really be ran in the Hajime Saito deck, but he's such a good card for being able to send cards back to your hand when attacking. Not only does he become a 4K when he does this, put a card on your front line back into your hand, but you can also use him to recycle cards like your 6 cost Hajime Saito. Since he's a when played, you use his impact and snipe, and you can't really snipe again, you can literally put him back into your hand with your 2 cost and then replay it the next turn. Such a good mechanic to have. On top of that, just to mention it, there's the 0 cost Kenshin, allowing you to put up to 1 of them into your sideline or just reorganize them to help you, filter cards, filter your deck more, especially early game for the perfect start. Yeah, all around, there's really not a lot of cons in this deck. Don't get me wrong, the fact that it does need to ramp up to a 6 cost can definitely put it in some situations where, fast-paced rush decks can sort of pressure it. I mean, those fast-paced rush decks are going to pressure almost anything it goes up against, even Red Kenshin, if they're rolling right. But I'd say with your really solid 4 cost options that you can play along the way to your 6 cost, the deck can really, really, put up a fight along the way, no question. Such an amazing deck. There's really not a lot of cons to this deck. It's so good. Yeah, I'd say the only thing this deck really struggles with is really just, again, the fact that it's a 6 cost, so there will be games where you struggle with energy, undoubtedly, but all around, yeah, this deck performs very well, and I'd say is easily a top tier deck. It's a very good competitor with Red Kenshin, and if Red Kenshin wasn't doing what it was doing, this would easily be like the best deck in Union. This deck it's so good. It's doing so much. And then diving into the purple Makoto deck here, a pretty solid deck for sure. Can fall flat at times because of how dependent it is on these two specific SRs here. But once you see these SRs, it's crazy how much work you can do, especially just with these few cards. It's wild. The deck also is very, very cheap. Only about $3 for your Makotos, $3 for your Seijuros, and about $12 for your starter Makotos as well. Coming out to about an $18 deck. And yeah, this deck is really, really interesting. In the best games, you're able to spam your removal plus get free raid bodies. Your Makoto here playing off this really interesting, a lot of the deck playing off this really interesting thing where you're sidelining the top card of your deck, and then getting abilities based off of the cost of the card you're sidelining. In most games, you're trying to sideline a 4 cost, with Makoto especially, because if you sideline a 4 cost, you get to sideline a card on your opponent's front line with BP equal to 1,000 times the cost of the card you sidelined off the top of your deck. So a 4 cost you sideline equals sideline of 4K. That's definitely the best situation. Also, when played with this guy, you can actually trash a card from your hand and set them to actives, trash one of your characters. So a really, really good 4 cost 2 action point, especially because what you're trying to do is get this Seijuro on the top of your deck into your sideline with an ability, because with this character, he has this line of text here where when this character is placed into your sideline from the top of your deck with one of your abilities, he actually gets to perform a free raid. And on top of that, when played from anywhere that's not your hand, you get to draw a card and he'll get impact till the end of the turn. And on top of that, you can redo this ability with his active main. If he's on the front line once per turn, you can actually unraid the card that you raided, put this raid back on top of your deck, and then obviously from there, use one of your other abilities where you sideline him and raid him once again. So essentially, you're able to get so much value out of just this one card. It's just going to be those games where if you don't see your Seijuro, or if he disappears off the field and you don't have a way to get him back, it's going to feel really bad. So yeah, it's a very dependent deck on Seijuro and Makoto too, since he can actually remove a character by getting a free raid out. This is easily the best combo in the deck here. While there are other ways to sideline cards off the top of your deck, like with Seijuro here or Makoto, getting you other effects as well, yeah, you really need this card to be the card you're sidelining. So while it can feel bad if you don't see this Seijuro and it doesn't really feel like there's many options for the deck at that point, this deck goes insane and feels really strong when you can keep recycling your Seijuro. On top of that, even if your Seijuro does get sidelined, you have this really strong Phantom of the Bakumatsu card here. It's an event card that actually does not cost an action point, essentially. You get to restand your action point after you use it, and you get to put one of your characters from your sideline back on top of your deck, aka your Seijuro raid. So allowing you to keep doing the thing, allowing you to keep sidelining this Seijuro and keep getting those free raids off. You can also use this ability to set other characters to active. For example, let's say you play this card rested, raid on top of him. Now you unraid him. He's now going to be remaining set to active after being raided on top of, so now you got a 4K. So you can essentially play out some really, really fast rush games. Again, it just comes down to seeing this Seijuro card. Pretty good draw power in the deck too. You've got your draw trash here, draw trash with Yumi. You've also got this 3-cost Seijuro here who allows you to search, who can definitely save you in some games because you need to see this Seijuro raid. He's also a double energy generator, which is fantastic with the trigger. This Makoto is going to be one of your other best options, by the way, when it comes to placing cards from the top of your deck into your sideline. He gets 500 BP times the energy cost. So if it's the 4 cost like we're aiming for, he becomes a 5K. And if that happens, he gets impact. So there's going to be a lot of turns as well where if you're pairing this Makoto with this Seijuro, the end game can go crazy because you're just swinging with impacts. So easily one of the best ways to play this deck is to recycle your Seijuro with this Makoto, so you're able to keep sidelining cards on your opponent's front line and then get attacks off, and then end the game with cycling Seijuro with this Makoto, so now you're ending the game with impact pressure. Yeah, all around the deck can definitely fall flat at times if you don't see your Seijuro, or if you get sidelined and you don't have a way to replay him, or you don't see the other ones. But again, can also go crazy when you can just keep taking advantage of these free raids and the abilities that come along with it. This 2-cost Makoto can be very interesting as well. When played, place one card from your hand to the top of your deck, allowing you to set up the Seijuro turn or any 4 cost to get good effects off if it's not Seijuro. But early game can feel kind of bad if you don't have a game plan with it and you need to play a 2 cost to like ramp or something. You just put a card on top of your deck and you sort of take away a draw next turn. But he's a 4K BP with a draw trigger, so I mean, he's a fantastic card still. Yeah, all around the deck plays pretty well. Again, just it feels really bad, the games where you don't see your Sojros, or if you see him and then instantly gets removed and you don't have a way to replay him and take advantage of him. But yeah, overall the deck is pretty interesting. I'm back and forth on it. I like it at times. I really don't like it at other times. I might splash in some other things like maybe Ironclad or Rengoku just for some really nice draw power as well. But yeah, all around, I mean, it's a good deck. It's a good deck. It's not bad. It's not unusable. I feel like it's less... It's like one of those high roll decks where you need to see the certain cards. At the same time, it's a low cost deck and somewhat consistent in the sense of recycling cards and stuff with Phantom of the Bakumatsu. So you see the right cards, you are going to be well off. If you don't see your... That's literally it. If you don't see Seijuro, or if you can only use him once or twice, and then you don't have access to him again, it's just going to feel really, really bad. So, yeah, to each their own when they use this deck. You're going to have some amazing games, or you're going to have some kind of rough games. The other thing that probably makes this deck feel a little bad at times is the fact that this Makoto's BP limit is going to be a 4K. You can't remove anything from your opponent's field. You can't sideline it if it's above a 4K, which shouldn't be a problem most of the time, especially because the special here does allow you to target 5 or 6Ks, hopefully, if you've got them on the field. You sideline a character with BP equal to the number of equal to or less than 1,000 multiplied by the number of the characters on your field. Again, you're going to see Makoto, Yumi, and 10 swords on a lot of these cards, and it's just the entire deck, just so everyone knows. Unless you're splashing in Hajime Saitos and Kenshins, which with the purple deck, I don't recommend. But yeah, all around, as long as you can see this Seijuro and you find your ways to recycle him with Phantom of the Bakumatsu, I'd say it's a pretty good deck. The games you don't see your Seijuro, or the games where you see your one and he gets sidelined and then there's just no other Seijuros popping up or Phantom of the Bakumatsus to recycle him, it's going to be some rough games. So yeah, all around, I don't know. I'd rather risk it for the Aoshi high roll, right? If I am seeing my stuff go for 8 attacks, then spam out impacts and 4K removal and stuff. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your playstyle, what you prefer, and what you're going up against too. If you're going up against a deck that literally puts cards into your removal, this deck's gonna unfortunately struggle. But yeah, that's pretty much the final words. If you are running this deck, I hope you see your Seijuros. All around, I'd say it's a fairly good deck. I'd say it's like good, mid to good. It is not a bad deck. It really isn't. Anyone that thinks this is a bad deck, you're gonna be surprised when you go up against somebody that knows what they're doing with it, that's for sure. But yeah, guys, that is every single Kenshin deck. More detail, deck builds on every single one of them. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this gives you some insight, especially if you are diving into Union Arena and you want to learn more about the Kenshin decks just from the breakdowns. If you want to go look at more options to put into the deck, in the breakdowns, I do cover every single card in the Kenshin set, which we obviously did not do today, and I cover them in a little bit more detail, diving into each and every card, so definitely check those out if you're curious. I do want to make these a little bit different from the actual breakdowns, and I think they will, in general, stand out a little bit more, especially because this is me talking about the decks after playing with them, after seeing them in our meta, after really getting to fill them out and see other people's opinions, you know, work with deck builds and stuff like that. With the breakdowns, I really am just trying to learn the decks for the first time and learn the sets and bring them to you guys with the information that we've got as soon as it's available. But yeah, hopefully this gives you guys some good insight. Let me know which decks you think you're going to be checking out after this, if this changed your opinion on any decks, and feel free to drop any comments as far as changes you might make or opinions that you have differing from mine. I'd love to hear them. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!